So we come to our third and last talk of this session. Our speaker is Dr. Andras Varro. So may I invite you on the stage, please? Dr. Andras Varro was born in Hungary and he has a medical degree from Medical University Szeged, Hungary. He began his career at the Drug Research Institute, Budapest, and then did his PhD and postdoctoral fellow in leading institutions in USA and UK. He was then with the Department of Pharmacology, University of Szeged, Hungary, where he led the Cellular Electrophysiology Laboratory, became a full professor, served as a chairman and vice rector for science and innovation. Currently, he is Professor Emeritus at the University of Szeged, Hungary, and a full professor at the HUN Research Institute, Szeged. I may be pronouncing it wrong. Szeged is okay?
Szeged.
Szeged. Okay. Yeah. Dr. Varro's research focuses on cellular mechanisms of antiarrhythmic and pro-rhythmic drug actions, particularly cardiac potassium currents. He has published over 300 papers, accumulating nearly 19,000 citations and an H index of 73, mentored 15 PhD students, received numerous honors, including the IACS Lifetime Achievement Award and Doctor Honoris Causa from the University of Buenos Aires. He is president elect of IACS and co founder and president of the National Academy of Scientist Education Hungary. So, welcome, Dr. Professor Varro.
First of all, I would like to thank for the nice introduction, and I would like to thank to Professor Goyal and Kumar for the invitation to here to India. And this is a beautiful country, and I appreciate not only the science, but also the culture of the country, which I enjoyed so much. So this is not the first time that I am here. This is the eighth occasion here in India. And I'm very pleased that in the crowd, mostly I see young people. And I would like to shorten my talk. So if I reach 20 minutes, please gently warn me. I don't want to waste your time too much. And because I think the audience is not specifically trained in cardiac electrophysiology, I try to simplify as much my talk as it is possible. So my talk is about possible novel target for antiarrhythmic therapy. And arrhythmia is an important disease, and this is maybe a complicated slide, but if you just focus on this, you can have a pointer. There is a pointer. Yeah, this is probably. Yeah. So if you focus only this part, this shows that cardiovascular disease is leading cause of death presently, and arrhythmia is one of the most common causes. Arrhythmia can lead to sudden cardiac death. This is about 400,000 people dies every year in the United States, and this number is so high that the American Army, United States Army, lost during World War II 4 years of fighting. This is a very big problem and not only mostly does not affect the very elderly population, but quite a wide range of population suffering of that. Other type of arrhythmia is atrial fibrillation. This is directly not lethal most of the cases, but due to other consequences like, for example, stroke, this can affect quality of life and mortality as much. And the problem is with atrial fibrillation that it's very frequent. It's affect probably more than 5% of the population age above 65. So this is a major problem. We need also prevention for arrhythmias, which Professor Butter gave the talk about, but also medication to prevent, if not cure, but prevent the sudden death or the consequences, bad consequences of, due to atrial fibrillation. So the major strategy after the cast and sword studies, which the studies just showed that the antiarrhythmic drugs, which we used for many decades, were not effective because they did so much harm as benefit. So we needed new strategies. So This is cardioprotection, preconditioning, treatment, the underlying diseases, uh, and application, novel discoveries, special attention paid for drugs against atrial fibrillation, because as I told, it is very frequent. And the atrial drugs against atrial fibrillation usually should be atrial selective, and this can affect different sort of ionic currents. So when I go to the directly to the topic of my presentation, I have to just simply tell you that antiarrhythmic mechanism, mostly the arrhythmia is due to the re-entry type arrhythmia, which is due to the problem of the impulse conduction and also the impulse propagation and the refractariness. So refractariness depend on the duration of the single action potential, cardiac action potential, which mostly, but not entirely, governed by different kind of transmembrane potassium channels. And the other important aspect is impulse conduction, which is mostly affected by the fast sodium current. So modulating these ion channels can be very crucial for the antiarrhythmic efficacy. But the problem, as I told you, uh, modulating these channels, they also not only can prevent arrhythmias, but can also evoke arrhythmias when the patients are in a symptoms-free situation. So therefore, amiodarone, a very old compound, was the compound which had the least proarrhythmic complication. Therefore, in the industry and the drug development business, there was the attention was turned toward not the selective antiarrhythmic drugs, which only affected one single specific channel, but we had a multi-target effect on different channels, affecting both refractariness, impulse conduction, and also automaticity. And this was the structure of sorry, this is the structure of amiodarone, which is a complicated molecule. The problem is with amiodarone is that has a lot of extra cardiac side effects, not so much the effect which I mentioned causing arrhythmias. But the problem is that the ratio of these side effects is quite frequent. So amiodarone as a multi-ion channel blockers, it can affect different sodium beta receptors, potassium channels, calcium channels as well. So therefore, amiodarone was followed by different compounds. Dronedarone was a compound which the concept was that they remove the iodide ion from the structure, and the desethylamiodarone, which also we had intensive work with. This is basically the main metabolite of amiodarone. So these were the studies which precluded my studies with the compound which I will talk about, tedisamel, another compound like that. And then we reached some compounds like the 16638. This was developed by my colleague, a chemical colleague from Budapest. And then we ended up with the SV compounds, which is I will talk about that just today. So I think I can skip this slide because these are conventional methodologies in cardiac electrophysiology in vitro and in vivo type of experiment measuring experimental arrhythmias and also measuring transmembrane action potential and the underlying ionic currents. So this is the structure of amiodarone, and this is the structure of the SV compound, SV2649, basically, which is, you can see here, we have the two iodide, and otherwise this structure resembles to the class 1b sodium channel blocker mexiletine. This is a conventional old antiarrhythmic drug, a congener of lidocaine. So when we studied the effect of this compound, our compound SV compound, it showed on the ECG that it lengthened the PQ interval, which was suggestive of a mild calcium channel blocking activity, and also lengthened the QT interval, which is indicator of the action potential duration in vivo setting. This is also was obvious in Peros and after intravenous application. And also it's decreased the sinus frequency as well. So then we studied the electrophysiological effect of SV compound on ventricular preparation. This shows the so-called HERC current, which is the underlying current on the action potential, repolarization, the action potential duration, as you can see here, that the SV compound lengthened action potential duration significantly, and also decreased the maximal rate of depolarization, the speed, how fast the action potential develops, and this is indicator of the impulse conduction in vivo, or the QRS duration on the ECG, and this shows the effect on impulse propagation. So, now I show some effect on the atrial preparation. This shows a effect on the so-called gear current. This is the alpha. This is the current flows through the alpha subunit of the acetylcholine sensitive the potassium current, and this has particular importance when somehow we would like to treat atrial fibrillation, because this has antivagal activation effect. So then we see here the effect on the atrial action potential, also like in the ventricle, the impulse, the V dot max, the maximum rate of depolarization also decreased, and there is a also increase of the action potential duration, which is somehow correlate with the refractory period. And in this experiment, what you can see, this is an action potential recording. This is the control situation from an atrial fiber. Then when we apply carbachol activating the acetylcholine sensitive current, it shortens back, because this is a potassium current which shortens repolarization, and the compound, the SV compound, lengthens this evolution, even lengthens the action potential duration beyond. So this is a very typical and useful antiarrhythmic efficacy, and amiodarone also shares this effect. And this is the effect on on the effect on experimental atrial fibrillation in the dog. So the compound comparing some other drugs in the therapy prevented atrial fibrillation in vivo dog model. So the effect on isolated canine ventricular myocytes on the late sodium currents are shown here. So this is the original current recordings, and this shows the effect of the compound at 10 micromolar concentration. This is also in the ventricular muscle myocytes preparation on the inward calcium current. As you can see, this is the original recording, and this is the current amplitude at different clamp potentials. So it shows, and this is important, there is a significant but moderate calcium channel blocking property of this compound. This is patch clamp experiment on different potassium current. Potassium currents, as I told you, are responsible to finishing cardiac repolarization affecting effective refractory period. And this is the rapid delayed rectifier potassium current. The compound decreases it at 5 micromolar, a moderate effect at 10 micromolar, quite a robust effect. And there is a moderate effect on the slow delayed rectifier potassium current. This is another type of current. On there is two other repolarizing potassium current showing the complexness of the repolarization in the cardiac ventricle mass. In these currents, the drug did not affect too much. And this slide shows the effect on the ischemia, reperfusion, ventricular arrhythmias in experimental arrhythmias in rats. And this figure shows that it was more effective, this compound, than the compound which we used as a reference compound. And this is, sorry, it overlaps this part, but this is the important figure that shows that the compound almost completely prevented these arrhythmias even better than maxiletine, which was the starting point in our studies. So summarizing our data here is that based on the presented experimental data, the SV compound possesses antiarrhythmic properties as it was effective against both experimental atrial and ventricular fibrillation. The cellular electrophysiological mechanism of the SV compound are similar to those of amiodarone. This is important because amiodarone is the most effective antiarrhythmic drug in the market presently, but the compound exhibits the multiple channel effects and strong inhibition also the acetylcholine activated potassium current. And the advantage should be what we expect from this compound, which already patented, that its chemical structure is substantially different from that of amiodarone, lacking the benzofuran structure, and it expected to have therefore less severe side effects than amiodarone. And this is what we hope. It's a promising tool for further investigation at the cellular level and the pathophysiology of the antiarrhythmic and proarrhythmic effects of this compound. I think I skipped these. This is the list of my collaborators in this work, and I think this is can be my most important slide for today because I would like to encourage you, if you are master and bachelor students, that we have a very good student program in Hungary, together working with the Indian and other countries' government, which can finance post PhD position in Hungary. And I would welcome every of you who are interested in cardiovascular research in Hungary in our lab. And I have to mention that we do not only do drug development start to this is a sort of drug development study, but we do basic cardiac electrophysiology, trying to understand the mechanism of antiarrhythmic drug effects and also the proarrhythmic efficacy of drugs or any other different condition, like, for example, like elite athletes arrhythmia. So therefore, thank you for your attention. And if you have any question, I would be ready to answer. And this is the program. And I put a poster on the wall if you are interested. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Varro, for sharing your vast work in discovery for another new antiarrhythmic like amiodarone. Uh, you all must be knowing that amiodarone is one of the most broad spectrum antiarrhythmics, but it has a lot of side effects, but it's still a broad spectrum antiarrhythmic used clinically. So we are looking for more myodarone like antiarrhythmic drugs with lesser side effects. And it just shown you uh, what all their lab has elicited. So we have time for some questions. And thank you so much for sharing about the Hungarian program. So all the PhD scholars and the master students sitting here, you could talk to Dr. Varro. He's available and he's put the poster outside. So thank you for that. Also, we're open for some questions. Yes. Can somebody give the mic? Why don't you come in front? Come on the side. Or speak, yeah, as loud as possible from there.
Sir, I want to question by what mechanism did amiodarone-like products counteract the arrhythmic effects?
He wants to know them.
Yeah, that's what's clear. It was a good question, and the answer is that has effect on the impulse conduction, especially at fast rate. I had not the time to go into detail about the frequency-dependent effect on the conduction, but has effect on the conduction and can block re-entry mechanism by blocking impulse conduction. At the same time, blocking potassium currents lengthens action potential duration, lengthens the effective refractory period, which also a very important so-called class 3 effect because it's prevent the early excitation by any kind of stimulus. And also, as I try to point out in the lecture, it blocks the acetylcholine dependent uh, uh, acetylcholine sensitive potassium current, which is an important current during atrial fibrillation. So as this three effect and also affects a little bit moderately the L-type calcium current, which has also importance. And blocking sodium and calcium current is important in the sense that has less pro-arrhythmic effect like other antiarrhythmic drugs, which have only selectively blocking the potassium current, lengthen action potential duration too much, therefore causing towards the point cardiac arrhythmia. And in the safety pharmacology studies, this is a major concern that if a drug can be cardiac or non-cardiac, lengthens QT interval, usually that's a major problem with many drugs. But this compound does not lengthen action potential duration as much as amiodarone has a limitation because not blocks only outward but also inward currents. And that was a very appropriate question. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Any comments, observations?
SVG as an experimental drug.
Yeah.
Are you planning to use as a therapeutic target or not, like as a therapeutically, or you just want to use it only experimentally to study the side effect of amiodarone? What's your goal with this SVG
Yeah,
long term?
this is very conventional drug development project because we had the concept that we would like to end up with a compound which similar like amiodarone but without the extracardiac side effects because amio is quite good in terms of the cardiac side effects and we have a patent on this drug already, and if the safety pharmacology and all the toxicology chronic, this is just the beginning of the road, making the long story short. And if it's patented and some companies are interested, the development can go on, or we can, and we have some follow-up compound, but I did not go into detail because of the time limitation. So this is, yeah, we would like to develop. That's the ultimate goal. Yeah.
So one question. So toxicity, the toxicity of amiodarone, massive. I mean, it causes hormonal changes, lung changes, skin changes, and all. So you are working on the preclinical toxicity aspects of this drug?
So the chronic so this study was concerning on the mechanisms.
Right.
Our hypothesis behind is that because the structure is so much different from amiodarone, lacking the benzofuran structure, we would not have this long list of side effects which you mentioned. Because we think that especially most of the extracardiac side effects depend not so much on the iodide, which many people think that it's depend on the iodide, but we think it's depend on the benzofuran structure. Toxicology studies is very expensive, and this is beyond our capacity in an academic basic lab. But this is the goal: have an amiodarone without the
Resveratrol.
without the long list of extracardiac side effects.
Thank you so much. So we close this session. Thank you so much, Dr. Varro and the other speakers. So please.
Thank you, organizers and the speakers for the wonderful session. So thank you all and the audience also for having patience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Andras, for the wonderful session. We would like to felicitate you.